Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am János Latorcai, Deputy Speaker of the Hungarian National Assembly, and may I welcome you most cordially to the third event of the Hungarian Presidency of the Council of the European Union, the Interparliamentary Conference on Stability, Economic Coordination and Governance in the European Union. May I extend my most cordial welcome to the chairs, the speakers, my fellow MPs, and my distinguished colleagues. During this interparliamentary conference, we will have the opportunity to exchange views on three thematic agendas on prominent topics, such as the emergence of electric cars, the reform of the EU economic governance framework, and the future of cohesion policy. These three issues, while interlinked in many respects, are worth highlighting because together they have a decisive impact on Europe's competitiveness, which is the key to our common future. This is why the adoption of the new European competitiveness deal is a top priority of the Hungarian presidency. Unfortunately, Europe's competitiveness has been in decline for some time. What is more, the events of recent years, such as the COVID epidemic and the global fragmentation it had caused, and then the Russian-Ukrainian war and the economic difficulties it created, have unfortunately further accelerated this process. Mario Draghi said less than a month ago that the competitiveness of the European Union is rapidly deteriorating and that unless effective reforms are undertaken, the economic and political relevance of the Union could be fatally weakened. Geopolitical tensions, the acceleration of the technological revolution, and trade wars are exacerbating our competitive disadvantage. I believe that there are areas, such as the development of internet search engines, where Europe's position is now absolutely beyond repair. But there are still many sectors where we have a chance to regain our position at the top of the world rankings through collective actions. I would include the European automotive industry and the technological shift associated with it. The automotive industry, which still accounts for 7% of GDP and directly or indirectly employs 13 million people and was in an enviable position 10 years ago. But the growing role of information technology and the electric switchover have dealt the sector a severe blow. The fact that almost everyone agrees that this problem exists is in itself a cause for hope, but the Commission, the Draghi report, the decision-makers in member states concerned, and the heads of the major car manufacturers themselves have very different views on the way out. The Draghi report approaches the problem from a regulatory rather than a concrete and direct financial support perspective, and would save the sector mainly through a lateral approach by promoting labor and energy costs and innovation. It proposes higher tariffs to keep Chinese competitors out of the EU market. The Hungarian government's 11-point e-mobility proposal contains partly different solutions, which we believe are closer to the needs of the sector's market players on a number of issues, and which you will hear more about soon when you receive a detailed report on the topic. Another priority for the Hungarian presidency will be to put into practice the new rules of the reformed economic governance framework and to launch the next cycle of the European semester in line with the new rules. The reform of the economic governance framework was accelerated at the end of last year under the Spanish presidency. The constructive atmosphere during the debate on the draft was exemplary and shows very well that we are capable of making the necessary compromises to achieve a common goal, in this case, the coordination of economic policies and their disciplining. It is important that the issues raised by the functioning of the regulatory framework are fully clarified as soon as possible, so that the reform of the framework can help to deliver EU priorities as soon as possible, while at the same time enhancing the EU's competitiveness and support for strategic autonomy. Comments on the reform will be discussed tomorrow under the second item of the agenda of the conference. This will be followed by the third and final item of our conference, which will provide an opportunity to examine the current situation, challenges, and future development of cohesion policy. As we all know, cohesion policy is the second largest expenditure item in the EU's multi-annual financial framework and is a competitiveness-enhancing instrument for the benefit of Europe as a whole. The Hungarian presidency stresses the need for a cohesion policy that supports future-oriented investments, taking into account the specificities and challenges of the regions, and which also addresses demographic challenges as one of its priorities. In order to be successful, cohesion policy must have an adequate long-term budget, which includes the costs of future enlargement. This makes it essential to have a professional debate on all these issues, which we ourselves have prepared for multilateral and in-depth discussion with presentations by high-level governmental and prominent international actors and thematic background papers prepared by the Office of the National Assembly. I am confident that in addition to the substantive and forward-looking discussions, you will have the opportunity to discover the beauty of Budapest and the hospitality of the Hungarian people. As a first step, I most cordially invite all of you to take a tour in the Parliament House after the official part of the conference, which will not only introduce you to the building itself, but also to some of the peculiarities of Hungarian history. And I hope it will help you to understand why we Hungarians are so attached to our national sovereignty. With these thoughts, I thank you on behalf of the Speaker of the House, László Kövér, for accepting our invitation. Welcome to Hungary, all of you, and welcome to the House of Parliament. Thank you for your kind attention.
Köszönöm szépen, alelnök úr.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Good afternoon, everyone. May I extend my most cordial welcome to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, here at the Interparliamentary Conference on Stability, Economic Coordination and Governance in the European Union, at the third event organized by the Hungarian Presidency. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. I would like to inform you that based upon your approaches to the Presidency, the representatives of the Parliament of Kosovo will also participate. I am Peter Cseresnyit, Vice President of the Economic Committee of the House of Parliament, one of the co-hosts of the event. I am assuming my role in place of Eric Banki, the chairman, who fell ill. On behalf of the National Assembly, three committees, the Committee of Economics, the Committee on the Budget, and the Committee on European Affairs act as co-host in Budapest. And now, a few technical details in relation to our conference. During the course of today, we will provide interpretation in English and French at today's meeting, and according to other requests, we will also have Italian, German, Spanish, and Serbian interpreters available. Please ask our colleagues, organizational colleagues in the room, for help in choosing your preferred language. Speakers are kindly requested to speak from their seats using the clip-on microphone, which is located in your desk drawer. And please do so at a normal pace for the sake of interpreting. You do not need to press a button to indicate your wish to speak, as the microphones will work automatically according to the order in which you take the floor, as you will see on the screen behind me. Please do not bring food or drink into the chamber. Water and coffee will be provided in the corridors throughout the entire conference. We are within historic walls, so the technical facilities in the room do not reflect all the requirements of our time, and charging of your electronic devices is only possible outside at the entrance to the room. And turning to the substantive part of our conference, allow me to open the first item of the conference agenda with my introductory presentation.
Kedves kollégák, tisztelt hölgyeim és uraim!
Distinguished colleagues, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, when we mention European competitiveness as the center of our discussions and negotiations nowadays, well, we will hear rather gloomy statements. Europe's competitiveness is facing serious problems, it is in decline, it is lagging behind global competitors. These and similar statements can be found, it's enough if you leaf through President Mario Draghi's recent comprehensive report. European competitiveness is therefore a challenge, but I believe it is also an opportunity for success. Recognizing this, the Hungarian presidency of the European Union has identified improving European competitiveness as a top priority in its program and has proposed the adoption of a new European Competitiveness Pact. In setting our agenda today, we have also chosen to discuss an area in which Europe, despite the difficulties affecting its competitiveness, plays a leading role and intends to maintain this role. It is also a priority for our economies and for European citizens, for the outcome of our joint reflection and cooperation can have a positive impact on European competitiveness itself. With the European Green Deal, the Union has taken a pioneering role in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and in achieving Europe's goal of becoming the first climate-neutral continent by 2050. But there is still much to do to achieve this ambitious target. One important area for joint action could be transport, which, as you know, is responsible for more than a fifth of the European Union's total greenhouse gas emissions, of which a large part, around 95%, comes from road transport. It is therefore not an exaggeration to say that achieving the goal of the European Green Deal depends on our ability to make the transport system as a whole sustainable. Encouraging and promoting electromobility is a clear solution to reducing emissions by the transport sector. By increasing the use of electric vehicles, local carbon emission can be reduced, people will have access to cleaner air, and therefore their quality of life will improve. Europe is also leading the way in this sense. From 2035, only new cars and vans with zero emissions will be allowed on the market. The economic importance of the European automotive industry is unquestionable, and it is, we could say, the engine of Europe's growth. The sector accounts for 7% of EU GDP, has a turnover of over 100 billion euros, and generates over 390 billion euros in public revenues. The European Union is the world's second largest car producer, with more than 12 million vehicles produced in 2023. If we look at the EU's top 10 car-producing countries, we see that this sector is not exclusive to the West or to the East or to the new or to the old member states. From Spain to Romania, from Sweden to Italy, we are all impacted. And let's not forget the most important point. The European automotive industry directly or indirectly employs 13 million people, almost 3% of the population of the European Union, and in terms of numbers, higher than the entire population of Hungary. The automotive industry is also undergoing a historic transformation. Tightening emission standards and the need to mitigate the negative effects of climate change are driving manufacturers more and more towards electric cars. This is reflected in the fact that 14.6% of newly registered passenger vehicles sold in the EU in 2023 were fully electric, battery-powered vehicles. The increase is even more striking when you consider that this proportion was only 1.9% in 2019. However, the share of electric vehicles in the total vehicle fleet is still quite low, and we will hear from our rapporteurs later. We will have things to do about this. The global take-up of electric cars is therefore unquestionable, but their market growth in the European Union has slowed down compared to expectations. In the first half of this year, sales of battery electric vehicles increased by only 1.3% compared to the same period of 2023, and their market share fell to 12.5%. So what are the reasons for such a slowdown, and what challenges are we having to face? To cite a simple example, the most common question asked in an electric car dealership nowadays is probably, how many kilometers can I do on one charge? And that is, of course, this is after asking how much will the car cost. Of the factors that most influence demand are price, range, and charging conditions. Price is perhaps the main factor behind the slowdown that we are seeing in the electric car market. If the price of electric vehicles is significantly higher than that of their internal combustion engine counterparts, people will opt for the latter. We can play an important role in the initial uptake of electric cars by setting up various support and rebate schemes to encourage people to purchase them. As we can see from the example of Germany, the closure of the electric vehicle subsidy scheme has led to a slowdown in the growth rate of demand. However, we must not forget the secondary market for electric cars. The price of used vehicles is lower than new ones, but buyers can be easily put off by the lower or reduced battery capacity of older models. In addition to encouraging the purchase of used electric vehicles, we therefore need to find a solution for replacement and recycling of batteries. The range of electric cars is also significantly impacting demand. To encourage customers to choose electric cars over the normal ones, the distance they can travel on a single charge needs to be increased. This development is also driven by strong competition in the electric car market, with European manufacturers making significant efforts to increase range. In my opinion, we can help to maintain the competitiveness of the sector through joint action and by effective support for research and development. The charging possibilities already mentioned will also have a major impact on the demand for electric cars. Infrequent, distant public charging infrastructure or long charging times have a negative impact on customers' decisions. A related controversy is that an inadequate charging network density may discourage electric car ownership, while more cars would be needed to operate a larger infrastructure. Action at the EU level is therefore essential to develop both community and household charging infrastructure, ensuring that the number, capacity and deployment density of chargers is increased and that the necessary electricity network is developed and existing capacity is expanded. On developing charging infrastructure, I would also add that the sufficient coverage can reduce range concerns, thereby increasing demand for electric cars. So the challenge is given, but the opportunity for cooperation is also there. Our speakers will present the position of the Hungarian government and the industry, but afterwards I'll be looking forward with great interest to hearing your comments and views, my fellow members of parliament. I'm confident that our joint thinking will bring us closer to our goal of modern, resource-efficient, competitive, sustainable and climate-neutral European Union.
And now, may I invite first Dr. Péter Koderiak, Managing Director of the Hungarian Battery Association, to deliver his presentation. I would kindly ask you to come to the lectern. Distinguished Chair, dear ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a great honor and privilege for me to have the opportunity to share with you my opinion on behalf of the members of the Hungarian Battery Association. We have the opportunity to share with you what we believe about the opportunities of the emergence of electric cars and their future in the European Union. The Hungarian Battery Association was established in 2021 as an organization with the objective of the following: the shift in the Hungarian automotive industry and the battery manufacturing and should be utilized because the shift to electric vehicles is indeed very strong in Hungary, with the participation of foreign stakeholders, and we see a very significant, even at European level, a very significant battery hub being established, building on capacities, and as expected by 2030, it is Hungary where they will manufacture approximately 20% of the battery cell demand of Europe, the most important market of which is the electric vehicle. Therefore, the debate is very important for the Hungarian government and Hungarian society that we are witnessing at a Hungarian and a European level, and we are very happy that we can share with you our opinions pertaining to that at this occasion. After the booming years of the energy crisis, as we have heard previously, the rate of penetration of electric vehicles in global new car sales slowed down during the course of 2024. Many actually are crying a wolf and talking about the e-mobility boom exploding, getting blown up, the balloon bursting. It is often reported in the media that new electric car owners are already regretting their choice and want to switch back to internal combustion engines. And those who wish to buy a new electric car fear that the performance of the vehicle will fall short of their expectations in terms of range, charging facilities, and on top of that, they will also cost much more than their internal combustion counterparts. Moreover, it seems that the European public discourse on electric cars seems to have lost focus, and at the same time, the media-consuming average European citizen may now perceive the electric car not as a very specific, objectified form of a positive vision of the future, which is nicer, better, cheaper, and more sustainable than his favorite old multi-cylinder car, but might look upon it instead as a threat that the EU may actually impose a ban on good old combustion engines. The majority of European citizens, therefore, have no desire for an electric car today, but instead are considering how to avoid any such ban, if the ban happens. Yet, the positive vision of electric cars is very strong, at least I believe that. After all, what could be a more attractive way to serve our motoring needs than to have the power generated by a solar panel on our roof or a windmill grinding slowly in the middle of a cornfield, quietly helping us to go to work or shopping or go on a holiday while saving the world a little. After all, there are no petrol fumes, no sooty diesel sounds, no climate-damaging carbon dioxide emissions, only the equivalent of 1 or 2 liters of petrol consumed per 100 kilometers, and no more oil to be mined, refined, and fueled. And fuel to be shipped, around every day to 7 to 8 billion people. Therefore, I believe that a majority of European citizens do not see this vision. Instead, many regard electric cars as a threat and not an attractive option. So, in order to ensure that electric cars continue to gain ground in the European Union, I believe that the first political task is to reverse this situation. That is, to make electric cars attractive to the masses of European citizens, and not only to the richest classes, but to masses of European citizens. Is this political task justified, timely, and possible? In my speech, I will seek answers to these questions, and then I will make some summary proposals, partly in concurrence with the 11-point proposal delivered by the Hungarian government to the European Competitiveness Council. The first question is it appropriate to promote the uptake of electric cars in the EU? And I do apologize for asking such a simple question, but some must believe that electric cars are overhyped in the European Union. I believe that the answer for those who see climate change as a major risk to future generations and the green energy transition as an effective risk management solution, the answer can only be yes. Transport, and within that road transport in particular, is responsible for roughly 1/5 of global greenhouse gas emissions, which in Hungary is 21%. Since the development of internal combustion engines no longer offers sufficient solutions for reducing transport emissions, the use of locally zero-emission vehicles could be the solution to decarbonizing transport. Although a few years ago, it seemed that hydrogen and battery propulsion were still in close competition in this field, by today, battery electric powertrain solutions have gained a huge advantage, which is hard to catch up with. We must always remind ourselves that the climate benefits of electric vehicles is totally unquestionable. it is questioned many times, but it must be stated here that it is unquestionable. Latest research shows that plug-in hybrid electric and fully electric vehicles using renewable electricity have 73% and 89% lower life cycle greenhouse gas emissions, respectively, compared to internal combustion engine vehicles, and this goes for their entire shelf life, their use, and taking into consideration recycling action as well. The current policy direction of the European Union, including Hungary, is in line with the transport decarbonization goals. General electrification based on green energy and a shift to electric transport based on this. So I do believe that there is total harmony between the strives of the European Union and Hungary. So is it time to promote the uptake of electric cars in the EU with the current dynamics? Do we have to do it now in the European Union? If we look at the market trends, then we can reach a conclusion that the bad news of 2024, besides those market trends, clearly show that the dynamic shift to electric cars is continuing. According to the latest survey by the International Energy Agency, the leading energy think tank in OECD countries, it is predicted that that it is only a matter of time before electric cars become the dominant mode of transport. They predict that the global fleet of pure electric vehicles will grow from 42.9 million in 2024 to 430 to 500 million in 2035, which is a 12-fold increase from today's level if current policies and the announced measures are implemented in the surveyed countries. The share of electric vehicle sales within new car sales will increase from 15% in 2023 to almost 45% in 2030, and to approximately 66% in 2035, and these are global figures. In 2023, China was the largest market for new electric vehicle sales, followed by Europe and the United States. The global dominance and order of these three markets will be maintained in the 2030-2035 timeframe. Growth dynamics are expected to be strongest in the US and the EU because the Chinese are starting up from higher figures anyway. In Europe, electric vehicle sales will grow from 3.4 million vehicles today to 10.1 million vehicles a day in 2030 and to 15.5 million in 2035. And the forecasts of the major market consultancies are in line with these trends indicated by the International Energy Agency. They suggest that this year's decline in electric vehicle sales growth is a normal phenomenon, more moderate than the extreme growth rates of recent years, and that the previously expected growth trajectory for the next 10 years is moderating. In fact, if you like, it is normalizing. So based upon the market trends, it is absolutely timely to provide further momentum and impetus to the European market trends, since it seems that those who miss out on the transition to electric cars are the ones who will be left behind. It is therefore not surprising, given the above trends, that there is a cutthroat competition for the development, production, and localization of electric transport solutions, especially between the leading regions, China and Korea, and the US and the EU. China and Korea have a significant competitive advantage in this area. In particular, they have a decades-long advantage over Europe and the US in the development and production of advanced high-performance batteries, a key component of electric vehicles. The development of electric motoring, electric cars, is also supported by significant public subsidies. Electric car production in China and Korea has led to the strengthening of companies that are already competitive with Western manufacturers over the last decade. Let us just think of BYD, or in Korea, the Hyundai Kia Group and their excellent achievements in this field. The US is responding to this challenge with innovative developments, as we are accustomed to, and unprecedented market protection measures. The first is exemplified by the success of Tesla and the protectionism which is embodied in the huge subsidies of the Inflation Reduction Act, the 100% import duty on imported electric cars, and the discriminatory measures that include only electric cars and batteries produced in the US in the scope of the subsidies, and they exclude components coming from China, for example. It is no wonder that the amount and proportion of foreign direct investment into the US from Asia related to the electric car industry has soared dramatically in the last 2 years. For the EU, and more broadly Europe, maintaining the current market position in electric cars and ensuring technological competitiveness is a key issue, as we have seen in the Draghi report, and which Mr. Chair has already mentioned during the course of today's meeting. Considering the fact that the automotive industry is one of the last remaining globally competitive manufacturing sectors in the EU, it is in the existential interest of Europe to successfully achieve the automotive transition. This will require a major transformation and localization of vehicle manufacturing technology and the supply chain. It has been clear for a decade that this transformation in the EU from internal combustion engines to locally emission-free manufacturing will be a necessary and painful process in the EU. We have just entered the painful phase, but we must not be discouraged. If the transition of the EU is stalled or falters, it could have disastrous results for Europe in terms of competitiveness. Rather than backtracking, a package of measures to improve the conditions of the transition and also to reduce the pain of the transition is the adequate way forward for the new EU leadership. The regulatory foundations for that are in place, building on the pillars of the Green Transition Regulation for electricity, the Net Zero Act, and the new Batteries Regulation, which entered into force in 2023. This is an excellent starting point to continue the current policies in place. And finally, I will now observe the question and ask the question of you, ladies and gentlemen, of how demand side and supply side and price measures can make electric car ownership attractive to the mass of European citizens. At this point, first of all, I would like to make reference to the 11-point proposal package of the Hungarian government, but I believe that Mr. State Secretary will deliver a presentation on that very soon. So therefore, allow me to turn to my personal favorite proposals, also supported by the Hungarian Battery Association, and provide you with a list of those. First of all, as we have heard, we need an adequate pricing, an attractive pricing, and we must make sure that the cost of electric vehicles is competitive to internal combustion engine cars, and this has to be enforced in the case of new cars as well. And therefore, it will be a highlighted task to provides a huge appearance in masses of the categories available for middle-class citizens through European manufacturers, if preferable. But I do believe that in this case, we will also be able to count on Oriental competition. Tariff protection might be counterproductive in this case, so we have to be very careful with customs protection. And naturally, the prices are also impacted by the various subsidies which are available in the various member states, including Hungary, for consumers. It is my personal belief that these subsidies must focus on the middle class. The large electric SUVs and luxury cars being subsidized by the government only enforce and enhance negative feelings towards electric vehicles. So we must focus with our subsidy programs on the middle classes. We have also mentioned the issue of adequate infrastructure. Obviously, a public charging network is a very important topic, but we must not forget that in the case of electric vehicles, 90% of charging takes place in the home. So the significance of home charging should be taken into consideration during your debates. This is my kind request, and to try and turn your policy measures in a direction which enable the promotion of home charging. And I would like to add here, in the form of a comment, that Hungary has enforced very beneficial energy prices due to the decreased overhead costs introduced by the Hungarian government, which adds a competitive edge to those who opt for electric cars. We have also heard about the issue of the used car market. We're talking about a new technology. Many customers who wish to purchase used electric cars do not know what they are actually buying, and they do not even have transparent information available on the condition of the batteries. So at a European level, we could ensure that an information on the health of batteries is or would be an obligatory task for all those who wish to sell their electric cars, and the governments could make sure that this information, which is very easily generated from a technological aspect today, is actually generated, which would probably decrease the high level of discount of electric vehicle prices when we're talking about used cars. It is my personal belief that many do not opt for electric cars because they don't have any driving experiences. They don't know what it's like to sit inside an electric vehicle. They never had the opportunity to test one. So we also have a proposal to you that mass driving experience should be provided for car drivers of the future, perhaps in a way that it would be the condition of gaining a driver's license to get acquainted with the driving experience pertaining to electric vehicles. And for that, subsidy programs could be provided for driving schools, providing them with electric vehicle, for instance, so that the young have an experience firsthand on what it's like to sit in an electric vehicle rather than an internal combustion engine vehicle. They might not even opt for sitting back into the latter any time in the future. And on the demand side, it's also very important that the security risks attached to electric vehicles be diminished, because we can hear of a lot of cases of fire. We're talking about a new technology, which means that the safety and security regulatory part is very important. And finally, allow me to share with you three other proposals. It's very important to have an integrated structure shift within the European Union, where those who fall out of the supply chain because you do not require any exhaust pipes, for instance, are provided with retraining by the government. and be reoriented into the electric car sector, or provided with different opportunities in other sectors. This is just managing the painful parts of the whole issue, but we do require retraining programs, and we require the development of service chains. The same goes for the battery supply chain, which we can see within the association as well. And I do believe that the strife that is visible in the case of the United States, that battery manufacturing takes place close to car manufacturing, therefore localization, this intention striving for net zero emissions should be supported and points ahead. And finally, I believe that Europe, since it is import dependent not only in the areas of natural gas and oil, but also in the case of rare materials when it comes to battery manufacturing, we must turn special attention for maintaining these materials in our own territory. And the practice applied by China, that this black must that is required for recycling in the case of electric batteries, they imposed a ban on its export from China. Probably Europe should consider something similar, namely that these raw materials should not be allowed to leave European territories, but we also must construct the recycling capacities in Europe, making sure that the proportion of recycling included in the Recycling Act should be implemented. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you these thoughts, and I wish you lots of success in your debates. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Péter Kaderják, for your presentation. And I'd like to ask Máté Lóga from the Ministry of National Economy, who is the State Secretary for Economic Strategy, Financial Resources and Macroeconomic Analysis, to deliver his speech from the lectern. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Distinguished Mr. Chairman, esteemed members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, dear colleagues, it gives me great pleasure to be here with you and to attend this conference in your company. I believe every single platform has to be handled with priority care if it allows us to discuss two main issues of our times: sustainability and competitiveness. The work of European decision makers will fundamentally decide if we can defend or protect the future of European citizens. Last week, ladies and gentlemen, I had the opportunity to chair the Competitiveness Council in Brussels. It was a great honor. There was a lot of very interesting and valuable thoughts that the attending ministers and state secretaries shared and contributed to the joint work that is conducted by the European Union and the member states in order to promote sustainability and competitiveness. Sustainability continues to be an important element in public discourse. This word has been mentioned 128 times and 37 times in the European Central Bank's annual report. This has become one of the most important flagship areas. We Europeans actually are one of the most ambitious competitors in this sense. Our objective is quite clear. We need to be the first to achieve climate neutrality on this continent by 2050. Of course, parallel to this, there are other power centers of the world that are also competing in order to gain prominence. The United States of America has announced the Inflation Reduction Act, the objective of which is to increase further American supremacy in green technologies. In terms of China, we are hearing as the most prominent green investor in the world, which by 2060 herself intends to be climate neutral. Speeding up this greening process is indispensable because in the basis of present forecasts, both in Europe and globally, we are behind decarbonization targets. I'd like to point out here that the Hungarian government was among the first to point out the difficulties of European competitiveness. The COVID pandemic, the Russian-Ukrainian war, the energy crisis were all issues that brought to surface the difficult points. And of course, we know that the European prices far exceed the American prices, whereas in the global performance, European performance have been continuously going down. So it is a great challenge for all of us. However, at the same time, the decarbonization transformation in the global economy also has an opportunity for us, and we have to make use of these opportunities. In order to do this, it is indispensable that European decision makers actually base their decisions on facts and to shape their policy in a way that is free of ideology. Last week, during the course of the Council, this thought was mentioned several times. Several countries actually share in this opinion, Hungary being one of them. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the sustainability transformation of our economy supposes the decarbonization of transportation. In 25% of the emissions are generated by transportation. In order to achieve carbon neutrality, the community has opted for e-mobility, and from 2035 onwards, only zero-emission new vehicles can be sold in the European Union countries. The market share of these vehicles, however, has not been increasing with the speed that we would have hoped. The EV segment has only reached around 2.5% in terms of increase. This is especially true in two large markets, Germany and France, where the sale showed a sharp drop. In order to achieve our sustainability goals, however, it is important for us to be able to restore the momentum of growth in the EV market segment. Hungary aims to be an economic bridge to allow the synergies of technology from Western and Eastern countries, and the production of electric vehicles can be an important platform for all this. Europe has accumulated centuries of knowledge and experience in the automotive industry, and today, to this day, the automotive industry is the largest private investor in R&D in the European Union. However, what concerns the shift from explosive internal combustion to electric powertrains, the pace of the EV revolution is now typically set by Asian countries because European car manufacturers have been slow to embrace this transition. By 2023, 6 out of 10 new electric vehicles in the world were sold in China, and much of the global battery manufacturing value chain can be tied to companies in China and South Korea, which also gained the dominant control over the extraction of rare and precious metals and minerals globally. So they are basically able to cover the entire value chain. Since the beginning of the change of the political system in Hungary, several major Western car manufacturers built capacities in Hungary. Warm welcome to Audi or to Mercedes-Benz, who have built factories and who have built successes here. However, their performance and success is, of course, not purely a Hungarian one, it's a European one. However, in the last few years, we have also seen a significant increase in the number of investments in the electric vehicle ecosystem, typically in the form of Asian FDI or European FDI. And the announced investments worth nearly 16 billion euros could make Hungary the world's fourth largest battery producer, allowing Hungary to supply about 35% of the EU demand alone, and thereby to allow Hungary to make a great contribution, a major contribution to decarbonizing transport. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are convinced that the concept of the transition to electric propulsion is right, and that we will witness an explosion in the technology development in this segment in the near future. However, we must make considerable efforts to further increase the market share of electric vehicles. In particular, the work of decision makers will have to reflect the following factors, and I'd like to enumerate them very briefly. First of all, it is indispensable that we have a rapid development of the European electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Vehicle sales have substantially outpaced the expansion of the charging network. Therefore, there is a clear bottleneck for this in the EV segment. While between 2017 and 2023, the number of battery electric vehicle sales increased 18-fold, the deployment of publicly available chargers only showed a 6-fold increase. In addition to the low number of charging points, their geographical concentration is also a problem. Last year, 3 member states, Germany, France, and the Netherlands, accounted for 60% of all public EV charging points in the EU. This is a huge concentration geographically. According to the estimates of the European Commission, in order to achieve the desired rate of electromobility, the number of public charging points will need to increase from the current 630,000 to 3.5 million by 2030. This requires that we install nearly 8,000 charging points every week over the remaining 6 years. It is also important that the ever-increasing number of electric vehicles be powered by the cleanest possible energy. This requires a constant greening of our energy mix. In this sense, we can be optimistic, as it is precisely in terms of decarbonizing energy production where European countries have made the greatest progress. According to the European Environment Agency, greenhouse gas emissions from the power generation sector by 2023 have fallen by 45% compared to 2010. We have to continue this work. The Hungarian government is convinced that nuclear energy stands to play a key role in GHG reduction and in further enhancing Europe's energy sovereignty. Recognizing the importance of nuclear technology in this field, the European Parliament and the European Council also declared nuclear energy to be of strategic importance for decarbonizing the EU. And in line with this, the Hungarian government decided to invest into POX-2, the Hungarian nuclear plant, second phase, to secure supply, energy sovereignty and sustainability. Instead of excessive protectionism, the competitiveness of the European automotive industry must be stimulated through market competition, targeted support and incentive programs. In July 2024, the European Union imposed a higher import duty on Chinese electric cars than before. We believe that this move will prevent the European automotive industry from being able to develop and innovate in the face of international competition. We believe that European electric cars should be encouraged through tax incentives, direct purchase subsidies, as numerous analyses show that the best way to move customers away from cars with internal combustion to electric is to reduce the overall purchase cost. It is also essential that the European car industry be as responsive as possible to the consumer needs in order to broaden the EV customer base. Further efforts should be made to produce longer range but lighter batteries and to integrate smaller, more compact EVs in the product range. In 2023, only 12 out of 100 EVs registered in Europe were in the smaller size category, although there would be substantial market demand for these. And I'd like to also point out to you that the Chinese manufacturers are much more successful in responding to this change in demand. The development of the EV universe value chain must also be in line with the principles of the circular economy. In parallel with the uptake of EVs, the large-scale recyclability of vehicle parts and used batteries will become a key issue. In order to address environmental concerns, it is proposed to promote technology-neutral procedures for the replacement of batteries or their parts, therefore supporting the long life cycle of used vehicles. In the case of used batteries, it is proposed to introduce a mandatory recycling method and a new certificate of reliability issued by state-supervised agencies. Electric vehicle production can create jobs across a broad spectrum of the economy and can also contribute to the development of the SME sector. At last week's Competitiveness Council discussed precisely this, promoting the SME sector. We believe that European SMEs do have a place in this value chain, and it is precisely this that we would like to promote, so that they are able to actually join the group of companies that are participating in electromobility, both through vertical or through horizontal integration. And for this, member state governments should also develop targeted programs with green and digital characteristics, and they should aim to contribute to the international EV value chain with activities that have the highest possible added value. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I hope that this interparliamentary conference helps us to reflect together on substantive challenges ahead and helps us to draw on each other's knowledge and experience to move forward towards solutions that are well adapted to the interests and opportunities of all member states. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. State Secretary, for that very interesting presentation. Following the keynote presentations, we have now come to our discussion. I would like to inform you that 17 requests to speak have been received on the basis of preliminary application. However, in addition to that, until the end of the session, you will have the opportunity to submit your requests in writing to take the floor at the registration table. The speaking time is 2.5 minutes. Please take that into account. I will ring a warning bell to indicate when the 2.5 minutes have elapsed, and then, following a few seconds, the microphone will automatically switch off. Speakers may speak from their seats, standing up. Please use the small clip-on microphone that you can clip on your lapel, which is located in your desk drawer. The microphone will only work from your designated seat, so please do not change your seats. As I have mentioned earlier, the microphones will operate automatically according to the order of speakers or order of contributors. The list of the contributors has been drawn up in such a way that the members of the Troika shall speak first, then the heads of the delegations in the order in which they have registered, and finally all other members of parliament in order in which they have registered. At the end of the speeches, 10 minutes before the end of the session, I will once again give the floor back to the keynote speakers so that they can respond and reflect on what has been said. After that, the session shall be closed. I would now give the floor to our first contributor, to head of delegation, Izabela Bodnar from Poland.
Distinguished Chairman, dear ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'm very pleased to be here and to take a part in this inspired discussion. Before I answer the question whether Poland is ready for electric cars, I would like to point out a few data points because I believe that we have something to be proud of, and above all, we are something to build on in terms of mobility. Poland is one of the largest suppliers in batteries of electric cars in Europe. In 2022, we were the largest manufacturer in European Union and the second largest in the world. We are also among the leading manufacturers of automotive parts in the world. Our export volume achieved near 70 billion euro. The automotive industry in Poland employs 200,000 people. With the connected businesses, it's almost 500,000, which means 8% of Polish GDP. Because this is a very large number, the Polish government has set itself the goal of protecting and ensuring the continuation of production, also after the transition to new low or zero emission solutions. We have a great team of qualified employees in Poland, whom we must support on this path of change. As Poland, we have enormous potential, that we have an opportunity to co-create a technological revolution. We are aware that the automotive transformation requires support from the state at the very initial stage, including financial incentives. That is why we are running financial support programs for a purchase of light electric vehicles, electric and hydrogen buses, support programs for the expansion of charging and refueling infrastructure for normal and high power. The total budget of the programs implemented so far amounts to over 5 billion Polish zloty. We are planning to launch, after further support and transformation program, also the road heavy transport sector. Among the European Union countries, Poland is the leader in the road transport market. Transport services are one of the most important elements of the production and supply chain. That's why we are working on launching 2 new programs: support for the construction of expansion of a publicly available charging station for heavy transport, and support for the purchase of leasing zero-emission.
Megadom a szót.
I will now give the floor to Mr. Thomas Geisel.
A következő felszólaló.
Our next speaker will be Jelena Božović from Montenegro.
Jelena Božović.
Jelena Božović from Montenegro. Our next speaker, Hüseyin Altinsoy from Turkey, from Turkey. He's also not present, as far as I can tell. I'll give the floor to our next speaker, because the previous speaker was not available. Jacek Włoszowicz from Poland.
As you know, in Poland we have two chambers, the lower one and an upper, and sometimes we differ in something. I would like to say about the future, about the nowadays, the past and the past of the past, and maybe sure you decide to give me this 2.5 minutes more. Fortunately, the past of the past for me it starts in 1970. Why? Because in that year Santa Claus came to me and gave me a car. It was an electric car. It was an electric car called Wartburg, and it was a police. Also, my friend of mine was also given the car. It was also Wartburg, but it was no police. Immediately we start to play, and it turned out that when I would like to catch him, because he was a stealer, I was a policeman, and I pressed the lights, my car start to slow down. It was the warning sign for me. In those times, I haven't no knowledge of physics. Now I know, and I know what's going on. And now about the past. It was in the beginning of 21st century. We noticed that the climate is changing, and that we should do something with that. We blame also the transport and the cars for the emissions, and our solution was to make electric cars. Nowadays, we have electric cars. We have electric cars which the range is not good enough. The process of charging is very long. The points of charging for us are not. There are not enough of them. Sometimes we feed our cars with electricity, which is produced of crude oil and also of gas. It's not the way we thought it will be. It will be. What does it mean? We should abandon this idea, or to keep that like it is. For example, when we look on our phones, we have to charge them every day. But no one is going to back to the telephones which we have 20 years ago.
Thank you.
And now I would like to give the floor to our next speaker, Onufrios Koula from Cyprus.
Electromobility is vital for achieving the EU's climate and energy goals, but even more important, for enhancing its energy security and strategic autonomy. Electric vehicles are central to decarbonizing our economies and reducing dependence on imported fossil fuels. The European Union currently remains heavily reliant on energy imports. Therefore, it is crucial that we invest more dynamically and decisively in electric vehicles. Significant advancements in technology have been made, along with reductions in manufacturing and purchasing costs and improvements in the range of electric vehicles on a single charge. However, the EU has not matched the bold strategies implemented by countries like China to promote electric vehicles. In fact, it was the competitive threat from China that prompted us to impose tariffs on Chinese electric vehicle imports to protect our European auto industry. Unfortunately, instead of a dynamic promotion of electric vehicles policies, now they are close to competitiveness, there was a setback and hesitancy in incentives and investments, which led to a decline in demand of electric vehicles. In light of these developments, we must accelerate our efforts. In my opinion, we need to formulate and implement a comprehensive pan-European strategy to boost demand for electric vehicles. This strategy should include providing incentives for consumers to purchase electric vehicles, expanding charging networks and infrastructure, offering R&D funding to the European electric vehicle industry so it can catch up with global competition. All of these have to be done simultaneously for obvious reasons, unless nothing will be beneficial by itself. We could redirect funds from the current multi-annual financial framework to support these incentives. It is imperative, I believe, that we act now with determination to bridge the gap. The whole EU and all the member states must act now before it's too late in terms of EU's whole competitiveness.
Köszönöm szépen a hozzászólást. Megadom a szót.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to give the floor to Ingeborg Gressle from Germany.
Herr Vorsitzender, vielen Dank.
Chairman, thank you very much. This is the sixth time that I'm attending a conference like this, but never before have I seen a lobby event, an advocacy event for one technology. This is the first time I'm seeing this, and I hope it's going to be the last time also. Because I think this conference is not and should not be about lobbying and promoting one single technology, even more so as this technology is beneficial to our competitors, namely China. Mr. Chairman, please, can you tell me that, I mean, obviously, I'm congratulating Hungary that for the first time you have attracted Chinese investments here for production. Actually, this is the only country in the European Union where the Chinese are producing. And please tell me this is not about boosting Chinese sales. And I know also that many German car makers are producing their electric vehicles, and I know that they have massive problems related to e-mobility. And this is why we are dealing with an approach that is actually diminishing the results, and it seems to be talking down or talking away the problems. So please let us address those issues at a level that we know as politicians, namely a very complex environment. Now, I think that the faster we want to make progress in electric mobility, the larger we're going to face a crisis of the European car industry. So I must say, the faster we are in e-mobility, the more problematic it is in Europe. And we see that in Germany, day in, day out. There are 4.8 million vehicles in Hungary and about 60,000 e-vehicles. That's 1.5%, according to my arithmetic. So if you want to promote this technology, it wouldn't make sense for the promoter to show it works in their own country. I believe electromobility will be a reality, no question at all. But the faster it happens, the more severe the crisis will be for the local car industry. And I must say, let's be prepared for that, because if we're losing people who work in the car industry, we're losing everything. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor to Žarko. No. I'm sorry. Nikola Radosavljević from Serbia.
Thank you. At the beginning, I would like to thank the host of the conference, and I would have to highlight that we have the highest point historically of our relations. The strong positive trend in development of bilateral relations is reflected in 6 sessions held successfully by the two governments. And the next session of the Serbia-Hungary Strategic Cooperation Council is planned to be held in Budapest in 2030. Regarding the use of electric cars, the government of Serbia has made significant progress in that area, in accordance with the decree on determining the criteria for granting incentives for attracting direct investments in automation of existing capacities and innovation. A contract on the allocation of incentive funds was signed between the Ministry of Economy of the Republic of Serbia and the company FCA Serbia. This is Fiat. The subject of the contract is the allocation of incentive funds to financially support the beneficiary in implementing an investment project relating to the modernization and improvement of local production plant in Kragujevac that is set to be used to manufacture completely new and innovative electrical vehicle. And the Serbian economy is most integrated with the EU market and with the market of the Western Balkans region through the framework of CEFTA. And the Republic of Serbia welcomed the publication of the growth plan for the Western Balkans presented by the European Commission in November 23. The growth plan for the Western Balkans provides a total financial support of 6 billion euros for the entire Western Balkans region intended for the region's reform agenda. Of that amount, 2 billion euros are grants and 4 billion euros through the implementation of integrative reforms. The objective is to stimulate the region's economic growth and accelerate socioeconomic convergence and connectivity at the level of the Western Balkans region. The plan covers the period from 2024 to 2027 and envisages that each of the six Western Balkans parties will receive a certain amount of money depending on the reforms that they have implemented during that period. This is progressive integration or progressive accession, because integration of the level of Western Balkans region is actually a path of integration into the EU single market. On May 2024, the Ministry of Economy sent a letter to the Ministry of European Integration, by which the Ministry of European Integration notified the European Commission through the mission of the Republic of Serbia to EU and Brussels that Serbia is interested in launching negotiations for the signing of ACAA agreement.
Tom Weidig.
Dear colleagues, why are there no horses on the streets of Budapest today? Because a better technology, the combustion engine, came along. It completely transformed our mobility, but not because horses got outlawed or because the government gave massive subsidies to cars. Only when the cars confirmed their superiority did industry and governments build the necessary infrastructure. The electric car is still an immature technology. Batteries are large, heavy, and low reach. And I have no idea where all the electricity should come from, especially if you destroy safe nuclear industry and cheap Russian gas is gone for many years. I doubt that when we change to electric cars that CO2 emissions will be reduced, because the oil not spent on cars in Europe is spent in Russia, India, and Africa, and less efficiently as in our modern diesel engines. Don't get me wrong, I love technology. I have a PhD in physics, and I am excited about how Elon Musk and others revolutionized electric cars. But I also worked in venture capital, and I know that pushing an immature technology too hard does far more harm. We politicians should trust in free markets. The industry and entrepreneurs are at the edge of technology and know best what could work. And the consumers, what they need in their life, we politicians do not. Our role is to provide the best possible framework, fair competition in a free market, money for research and universities educating the best engineers. Therefore, we should drop the ban on combustion engine for 2035 and reduce our subsidies. A better technology does not need either. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that contribution, and now I shall give the floor to Žarko Ristić, member of the delegation.
Thank you. Distinguished Chairman, distinguished Minister, dear fellow parliamentarians, I am very honored to be here in the National Assembly, and my name is Žarko Ristić. I'm a member of the Committee on the Economy, Regional Development, Trade, Tourism and Energy of the National Assembly of Serbia. In Parliament, I am an opposition MP. I thank the host of the conference for the invitation, and as my colleague mentioned previously, in accordance with the decree on determining the criteria for granting incentives for attracting direct investments in automation of existing capacities innovation, the government of Serbia signed a contract when we talk about that production plant in Kragujevac. In March 2020, the government adopted the industrial policy strategy on the Republic of Serbia from 21 to 2030, while the action plan for its implementation for the period for 21-23 was adopted in April 21. The adoption of the aforementioned documents builds on the industrial policy in place so far and is aimed at sustainable development while increasing competitiveness. The aim of strategy is to increase the competitiveness of the industry of the Republic of Serbia and 5 areas of interventions and defined for the achievement, with 5 targets and measures for their implementation in the areas of digitalization, innovation, investment, export restriction, and the circular economy. In addition to the Ministry of Economy, the key partners for the implementation of measures and activities of Serbia's industrial policy strategy from 21 to 30 are the Serbian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Development Agency of Serbia, the Ministry of Science, Technology Development and Innovation, the Ministry of Environmental Protection, and Ministry of Mining and Energy. Activities in the new action plan for the period from 2024 to 2025 cover the area of digitalization, which includes artificial intelligence projects and the green transition, which are set to be the main drivers of industry development and competitiveness, with activities in the areas of innovation, investment and exports restructuring, the transition from labor incentive sectors to innovative and technology incentive sectors.
Thank you very much, and now I shall give the floor to István Loránd Antal.
As the chairman of the Energy Committee from the Romanian Senate, I'd like to give you a short overview on the real situation on the energy sector, and starting with my home country, Romania. In my country, due to the Green Deal and Fit for 55 goals, Romania in the past few years phased out more than 5,000 megawatts of electricity production capacities based on coal. For instance, because of these decisions in this summer, we had a huge shortage of electricity, which increased the prices. Meanwhile, in other European countries, they reopened the electricity power plants based on coal. True facts from the European Union, at the European Union level, as results of the energy crisis and lack of energy security. First, BASF, as we know, closed the industrial platform and moved their platform to China. Other industrial platforms from the European Union moved their activities in the United States based on the Inflation Reduction Act opportunities, facilities. Because of the renewable energies, we had an unbalanced market now and need of more than 800 billion of euros investments in the European grids for the transport system operators and for the distribution and system operators. International Energy Agency figures shows that the yearly natural gas consumption and production worldwide is increasing, which means that on European level, we should put the spotlight on natural gas production capacities and focus on how our union could become an important actor worldwide on energy field, not to ban it. Electrification obviously is the future. We should electrify our railway systems and our electric vehicles systems, and of course a very strong distribution system for them. We need common sense of energy security, which means capacity of production, electricity, natural gas, operation and transport systems, ODCs, and of course, capability of defense of these systems. Short conclusions. Starting with 2027, Romania will become the biggest natural gas producers. Of course, we need base load production capacities and more electricity. We need strong functional industries, not memories of them. We need to redraw the Green Deal.
Thank you very much. And now I will give the floor to Bartolomeo Amidei from Italy.
Presidente, esimi colleghi, la Commissione Industria, Commercio, Turismo, Agricoltura e Produzione Agroalimentare del Senato italiano sta svolgendo un'importante indagine conoscitiva sul settore automotive.
Unfortunately, the microphone of the English. The Italian government is dedicated and committed to the policies which target any shift to sustainability. And the committees, responsible committees, are performing a very important survey on the importance of electric cars. The spread of electric cars has become rapid worldwide, and many countries have decided to take measures in order to avoid or take out from the market internal combustion engines. However, there are risks that such shifts will be forced which focus on a single technology without any measures taken which do not take into consideration anything that is important for the Italian and the European industry. The charging infrastructure is gradually developing in Italy, but slower than in other countries. Italy is the most motorized country in Europe, and the cars are the queen of mobility. The increase towards electromobility and the opportunities pertaining to it are great, but they would require a long-term plan which efficiently take into consideration supply and demand, the supply chain, and the policy that provides support for all that. The shift would require more gradual interventions which can provide actors of the sector with the necessary tools so as to ensure that the extra costs do not burden the employers. Unfortunately, we often see the tendencies that the shift to electrification is only limited to large automobile manufacturers. New skills are also required and comprehensive R&D activities, especially in the case of the small and medium enterprises of the sector. There are almost 600,000 individuals working in the Italian automotive industry, majority of which are employed by companies with less than 50 employees. The shift to electromobility, which is considered as merely a manufacturing opportunity, also carries other risks, since the European market will have to enter into competition with China and the United States. Therefore, we must cater for this transition and defend this sector of strategic importance for Europe. And in climate neutrality, we could rethink any steps that we take in the field of a shift to electromobility. Thank you very much for the intervention, and I will give the floor to Carsten Klein from Germany.
Meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, erstmal vielen Dank, dass
Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, first off, a warm thank you for this event. The automotive industry in Europe is one of the biggest industrial sectors, also one of the biggest employers. Vast parts of our prosperity are generated there. Over the last decade, e-mobility has been significantly promoted. Incentives, purchase subsidies for charging infrastructure and battery technologies. In addition to that, we have seen a next-generation EU. However, e-mobility has not been a success. Registration numbers lag far behind what has been forecast, and that is why the response cannot be more subsidies and more support measures. We have to pursue a new approach. We need to be honest. e-mobility is not climate neutral looking at our electricity mix today. We need technology openness. As politicians, we should consider all technologies that can lead to climate neutrality. In Brussels and in Europe, there's still a lot of room for improvement concerning the rules. And third, we must not overburden our populations and our economies when it comes to speed, and that is why we need new fleet limits. We don't have to raise awareness. We don't have to provide more information. Everybody who would like to try out an e-vehicle can do that, and we should let our citizens decide for themselves whether they want to use an e-vehicle, and they can make up their minds for themselves in terms of range, in terms of charging infrastructure. We have to define our goals clearly, and the market will decide whether cars with combustion engines or e-vehicles are the solutions here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your thoughts, and I now give the floor to Chrysis Pantelides from Cyprus.
Dear colleagues, electric vehicles play a key role in European Union's ambitious plan to minimize our reliance on conventional fuels and to reduce greenhouse emissions, not only because we need to combat climate crisis, but also because we must safeguard our competitiveness across the world. European Union's advantages are there: advanced technology, financial resources, innovative industry, and strong commitment to environmental sustainability. These are the elements which enable the European Union to be ahead of Japan, ahead of the United States, ahead of India, ahead of South Korea. Nonetheless, this is not enough. To lead the global electric vehicle revolution, we have to compete with China in car production and sales, and we need to encourage European citizens and European businesses even more generously, even more effectively, to use European electric vehicles powered as much as possible by clean and renewable sources. Thus we will be able to influence global developments and shape international standards in the booming electric vehicle industry. The path is quite clear, but we have to be flexible and effective, and we must take bold steps. Increase charging points across Europe, increase green energy production, encourage investments in research and development for energy storage, provide to consumers more simple and attractive incentives, and last but not least, create educated and skilled workforce which will support this emerging market. Dear colleagues, Europe leads for decades the conventional vehicles industry. It is in Europe's hands to repeat this achievement in electric transportation, for a cleaner, safer, greener, and more competitive future. Thank you.
Köszönöm szépen.
Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to Florence Blatry-Contant from France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mes chers collègues, avant d'évoquer le sujet de première importance qui nous...
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Before I talk about this important topic as a member of the French Senate, I would like to say how happy I am to be here at this debate today. The future of electric vehicles, I would like to discuss from national and from international perspective. Transport is perhaps the largest emitter of greenhouse gases in France, even ahead of the industry. Therefore, this is a basic priority sector for us in terms of our ecological transition. So France has supported the transition with an ecological bonus. The French Senate discovered that this bonus that is actually given has supported the purchase of Chinese vehicles, which for ecological purposes, which for economic purposes, and also ecological purposes posed a problem. So therefore, the government decided to recalculate this bonus, and in this new recalculation they are actually also incorporating the information of how much CO2 was emitted during the production of that vehicle. I think that is the kind of role that a national parliament should play when it comes to a true, real ecological transition, and these are similar challenges that other countries are dealing with. There is an environmental and an economic challenge. Of course, on the one hand, we would like to respect the ban that we have set for ourselves for internal combustion vehicles from 2035, but at the same time European institutions should also protect the European vehicle manufacturing from all kinds of unjust competition, and if it is necessary to actually impose a special tax on Chinese vehicles as it was proposed by the European Commission, then so be it. That might be what we need. For us, we believe this is an important, necessary step. Thank you very much, Madam Senator. And now I give the floor to Mariusz Wiczak from Poland.
Dear colleagues, we are here because we have to think how to improve the situation because electromobility market seems to be in stagnation. We know why, because of the prices of energy, high prices of electro industry. Electromobility cars are too expensive, and if we want to introduce better, we need to coordinate some kind of issues. I think that coordination is the key issue for us. For example, recharging system. Recharging system should not be different abroad to the recharging system at home. We need to coordinate the investment into recharging infrastructure. I am sure that European Union needs something like cohesion program for introducing electromobility ideas and electromobility market. Lots of work ahead of us, and if we don't invest, we will fail. Thank you.
Köszönöm szépen.
Thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor to our next speaker, to Mr. Teoharis.
Dear colleagues, it seems to me that we are not recognizing in Europe a simple fact. The fact that the green transition in general and the electrification of transport in particular is a strategic exercise. And as such, I will respectfully disagree with my colleague that we can just leave it to market forces. This strategic exercise, we can picture it as a triangle. In one apex, we have speed, whether we will transition quickly or slowly. In another, we have cost, whether it will cost us a lot or not so much. And in the third, we have competitiveness, whether it will help or hurt the European industry. We cannot have all those three together. We have to make choices. Now, China and the US understands that. We seem to be slow in understanding it. China decided very early that it will sacrifice speed for cost and competitiveness. It started early, and it's progressing according to its plan. The US decided lately that it will sacrifice costs for speed and competitiveness, with IRA it's spending a lot of money in order to ensure that it achieves the other two objectives. We have to decide what we're going to sacrifice and what we're going to keep. And this discussion has to be European, and as a result, it has to happen in the European institutions. Unless we make those decisions, I don't think we can easily move forward. So I put forward that this is a discussion that needs to happen urgently, and as a result, the actions will follow much more easily after that. Thank you.
Köszönöm szépen.
Thank you very much, and I now give the floor to Igor Peterna from Croatia.
Dear Chairman, dear colleagues, the automotive sector is undergoing structural transformation, from the rise of electric vehicles to integration with circular economy and digital value chain. We believe that the EU Fit for 55 legislation package represents a solid basis for sufficient investments in fossil-free electricity production and infrastructure. Therefore, in the upcoming period, the focus should be on implementing the existing rules before introducing new ones to ensure the security of investments. Currently, the cost of electric vehicles is significantly higher than vehicles with an internal combustion engine. Therefore, we need measures to boost the demand. We believe that financial incentives for purchasing electric vehicles are needed, but they must be carefully planned to avoid strained investments and negative public attitudes toward new technologies. In accordance with the above, it is necessary to consider the types of vehicles that are co-finished and to prevent a co-financing of expensive vehicles and so-called large vehicles. Large vehicles also put pressure on the battery market because they need significantly larger batteries. Manufacturers must concentrate on the production of small city cars. Emphasis should be placed on the mass markets, which is exactly what we need and is what and want the transition to happen. Government measures of incentives should go in the direction of subsidies, input tax, deduction, free parking for electric cars in cities, and free tolls on highways. Digital transformation is essential to improve manufacturing efficiency and reduce costs. Also, investing in battery technology and use of sustainable materials and manufacturing process is of crucial importance in automotive industry. The automotive industry in Croatia is progressing in the right direction, but still has the potential to improve. Overall, by investing in the automotive industry, Europe can strengthen its position as a global leader in the industry, manufacturing, and innovation sectors. Time is short, so I will conclude here, and thank you very much for your attention.
Köszönöm szépen.
Thank you very much. There were no more requests for any intervention, so I would like to thank everyone for their interventions. And now I would like to give the floor back to our two keynote speakers to respond. First, I would kindly ask Mr. Secretary of State to deliver his responses. Thank you very much.
Continue in English because most of the questions were raised in English. First of all, I would like to call the attention to that we are now heard many speeches about a geopolitical issue. And I would like to call the attention that right now we are facing more technology issue. So do we want to let the electromobility to spread in Europe or not? Do we want to rely on electromobility or not? And now, unfortunately, in many speeches, I found that It was more like a geopolitical debate instead of technology and forward-looking approaches. Second, without defending, and I would like to ask for respect in this regard, that I'm not here to defend the Chinese approach on electromobility, but please be noted that the results and the consequences of IRA is also threatening the European industry. So when we are raising questions regarding the Chinese problem and the effect of Chinese technology spread to Europe, I would like to call the attention to that within the framework of IRA, the United States of America is basically attracting EU and European companies as well. This is also a huge problem, and I would like to call the attention to the fact that last week during the Competitiveness Council there was one specific issue being raised by your government members, is that the too much economic legislation is causing harms for the industry as well. Not only the technology is an issue, but also the legislative framework of the operation of such industries. Last but not least, by skipping from this topic to the next one, please be informed that the protectionism that we are now talking about in the USA started a lot before. The real protectionism regarding the car industry started with the Volkswagen case in the United States in 2008-2009. It was continued by the Trump administration, which was orally articulated way of protectionism, if we remember, and the Biden way of doing economy is also the continuous way of protectionism. And then, if I may answer to specific issues that has been raised. First of all, I would like to absolutely deny that statement that we are artificially enhancing the attractivity of Chinese FDI. The Chinese FDI would come to Europe anyway as well. There is a massive fight between EU countries for attracting FDI, not only in Hungary but everywhere in the European Union states as well. Then I would like to call the attention to one more specific thing, is that a couple of years ago it was just the essence, and that was the only way how we could sit down and start a debate with accepting the spread of electromobility and electric driving as a fact, that it's a must for Europe to go ahead in this regard. These decisions and these approaches were unfortunately based on false dogmas as well. When we call the attention to that, we should continue the talk on. We should continue the talk without having dogmas on electromobility, because this is a technological issue, not a dogmatic issue. Then these kind of approaches were rejected as well. And I was very glad to see, very frankly speaking, during the Council meeting that many member states articulated quite heavily. As I don't want to go into the details which member states, but many of you I can tell, otherwise I would be an honest broker, so please forgive me for that, that technological and technological capabilities, capacities, and way of doing business and having the right infrastructure for electromobility, these four elements have to work hand in hand. Otherwise, we can push the gas button we can push it, but we are not going to succeed. And I think that's a very, very wise way of approaching this situation. There is also a debate that I can see it's been emerging, and we should evaluate it, regarding the state subsidies. I would like to just kindly ask the attention to that. We in Europe can be very protectionism, can follow the protectionism. It's a decision whether to follow or not. We can close the borders for Chinese cars, but I would like to just kindly remind you that there are other continents in the world, and on these continents, since the Chinese cars seem to be very competitive, they will also compete with the European industrial products as well. So we can close Europe in front of Chinese technology or industrial product import, but there are other continents where they are not going to do that, and on those continents, European car makers will face a tough competition in that advance. So, first of all, I think it would be better to raise a question whether do we want to compete with the Chinese car makers or not? Do we want to reach the competitiveness through closing the borders for Chinese influx of technologies and industrial products? Meanwhile, I would like to also emphasize that while we are now thinking about whether to close the border lines or not, the U.S. industrial production, especially in case of green technology, is improving. So I think it's quite problematic that 5 or 10 years ago, when we first started to put on table this green transformation issue, it was not articulated quite well that do we have enough capability, technology, and willingness to go through a transition from combustion-based engines to electric engines. Now we have started the route. We definitely took several steps. In Germany, for example, but I don't want to go into one specific countries, but in Germany it was dedicated, and it was a dedicated policy, for example, shutting down the nuclear plants. And when we have done several steps ahead towards electrification and green technology, now there are questions that maybe we should stop. So if we do something, then we should do it with full speed and full knowledge. Last but not least, 2 other things. One is gas, natural gas. I know this is a very, very sensitive question, but purely from technology point of view, I would like to tell that a balancing way of electricity is needed in our electric grids. Without balancing electricity, the electric grids are dead. How can we use balanced, and how can we ensure balanced electricity in our grids? One of the easiest way is still natural gas. So we can get rid of the gas. We can speak about getting rid of the gas, but unfortunately, for several more years, by increasing the green technology for one specific volume of green electricity, we will need one additional piece of balancing electricity as well. And the balancing source should also come from green sources. It might be correct, but most of the cases, the technology relies on natural gas. Last but not least, I don't want to go into this question because I think the European Commission and the European Council has made it clear that nuclear energy should be continued. I would like to also call the attention to that. There is one specific country where the nuclear plants were shut down, and by facing the electricity prices going to the sky, the answer was opening up the coal plants as well. So I think that's not the right direction to go ahead. All in all, I think it was very, very fruitful, and first of all, let me thank you for all the very, very good comments on it, and I would like to facilitate all of you to spread your knowledge to your ministers and state secretaries who will be present at the next European Competitiveness Council meeting, because we are all ears, we are listening to the voices of your colleagues, and we would like to implement it in the so-called Budapest Declaration this year, and we would definitely want to facilitate you to share your view on it, send your comments, because we would like to facilitate the European competitiveness to have it increased. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, and I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Kaderiak. Please come to the lectern.
Dear colleagues, dear ladies and gentlemen, I would also like to speak English now. Thank you very much for the lively discussion and the opportunity to reflect on some of the points that were raised during the discussion. Well, my first comment would come to the geopolitical dimension of the discussion. And I think it's inevitable that when discussing electromobility and the energy supply for mobility in general, the discussion ends up in geopolitics. A few years ago, I served as an Energy and Climate State Secretary for this country and participated in several discussions on these issues. I mean, Europe's choice for Russian gas versus green transition, because Europe is unfortunately is an energy import dependent continent, and have to choose whether to use oil and gas and import it from Russia and other regions versus continue the green transition, for which Europe also doesn't have the necessary basic materials in-house in most of the cases. So that's inherently a choice between different dependencies. And in this regard, I think Europe has a real task to make a very sensitive decision on this regard. So it's not surprising that also in the Draghi report, the comments on Europe-China relationship is sort of very careful, and maybe not the American type of comments, or Europe should follow the same kind of tough relationship with China. But that was my comment. So I don't think this dispute can be decoupled from geopolitics, and should not be decoupled from geopolitics. Now to the more some of the issues. For me it's so surprising how afraid and frightened some of the European car makers from the Chinese competition, while it is Tesla who is beating German car makers, I mean, on the European market. So it's, and we just don't talk about that. So it's Tesla which is the best-selling car in Europe, maybe first time after Ford. that would make such international success. But we are continuously afraid of China. Now, I would like to ask, just a month ago, I visited Beijing, visited a Mercedes-Benz production factory in Beijing, producing Mercedes-Benz and selling on the Chinese market and producing there. So, and I think German car companies has made the rest of their profits by entering the Chinese market and being active there. So, if you talk about reciprocity, what could be bad about foreign investors entering the European market? For me, it's a really big question, especially when there are also some comments that we should carry out fair competition of different technologies on the European market. Now, how fair competition comes together with tariff protection for certain technologies, because tariffs reflect a fear from competition from imported goods. So maybe if some imported cars could enter the European market without tariffs, they would be already cheap enough to compete internal combustion cars. So it's very interesting how arguments for competition for technologies and at the same time protectionism was mixed in the discussion. I'm not surprised because that's a decisive time, I think, in this regard. But I just wanted to really pinpoint out these contradictions in certain arguments that we just heard today. And my last comment is on the fueling infrastructure again. I think you, like European policymakers, created in the last 20 years maybe the most robust interconnected electricity system on the globe. So the European internal electricity market, I think, is a great achievement of European cooperation. And the result is that essentially we have a fantastic fueling, the recharging infrastructure for e-mobility. Every socket that provides electricity overall in Europe is a charging point. So I'm an active e-car user, so I can assure you that it really works very well, and the density of the fueling infrastructure in Europe for electricity cars is much more dense than for traditional cars, thanks to your work in the past. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaderják, for reacting. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the first agenda point. I'd like to thank our speakers for coming and for sharing with us their positions, opinions on this very current issue, very important issue. I thank you all for your very active contribution to the debate and for your attention. Finally, I'd like to share with you information about the rest of the day. Soon, there's going to be a family photo. I would like to ask everybody who is attending and all the speakers to please proceed together to the main staircase of the Parliament, past the Hungarian crown. After that, we are going to have a French and English language guided tour of the Parliament building. And from 6 o'clock, you will all walk together to the pontoon on the Danube front, and you will have a dinner cruise on the Europa ship. I would like to remind you that tomorrow we begin at 9 o'clock with the official program, with the second agenda item in this very same room. I thank you all and wish you a very enjoyable evening.